In today's scoop, we take a look at the effects of Indian artifacts being smuggled out of the country. New York Museum to return 15 antiquities to India. This was a headline in the Times of India last week. But the headline doesn't mention one thing. These antiquities were actually stolen from India. Idols are pilfered from temples. Rock inscriptions are taken away from our heritage sites. Paintings are shipped across the seas. And they all find a home in a foreign museum for people to gawk at. And in the past few years, museums from across the world have been handing these back to India. In 2021, the US returned 248 pieces worth $15 million in one of the largest ever transfers. Now before you go on a rant about how India is always looted by third parties, let's first clarify that it's a global phenomenon. When we did a quick search, we found that this sort of illegal trade in antiquities could be worth $6 billion a year. From the churches of Italy to the burial grounds of Mali. It's a well-oiled syndicate that runs the show, and it's quite a lucrative illicit enterprise. Also, the people who've stolen our antiquities are actually Indians. And we've had multiple kingpins running the show over the decades. We had Vaman Ghia in the 1970s and 80s. Ghia was so brazen that he once apparently even told a buyer, "If you want the Taj Mahal, I'll send it to you. I'll take it down piece by piece." And then it was the turn of Subhash Kapoor in the 1990s and 2000s, who brazenly shipped idols from temples across India to New York. Even customs officials in India apparently turned a blind eye to his illicit shipments. Where are these folks now, you ask? Well, Ghia was arrested in 2003 and confessed to his crimes. But in 2014, he was let off by the courts in Rajasthan that said the investigation was shoddy. Ouch. Kapoor, on the other hand, was sentenced to 10 years in prison by a court in Chennai just a few months ago. And he'll probably even be tried for his crimes in the US. But while these smugglers run amok, what are we doing to prevent the theft of our national treasures? Well, we do have the Antiquities and Art Treasures Act of 1972. And the goal here was to protect antiquities that might include manuscripts, jewelry, sculptures, and paintings that were more than 75 to 100 years old. But as per historian Shalini Mathur, heritage theft gets clubbed under the same category as housebreaking theft. So the penalties and fines aren't stringent enough, a maximum penalty of 6 years and a fine, to really deter people. When these dubious folks do the math in their heads, they'll probably believe the rewards far outweigh the risks. But even if we turn the screws on the law, it may not be enough. And that's because we haven't even created proper records of our antiquities. See, while we created a national mission for monument and antiquities whose job it is to track these valuable objects, it wasn't successful in its endeavors. While estimates say that there are over 6 million antiquities in the country, only 1.7 million of these were accurately recorded. So when items are stolen, we aren't aware. No one files a complaint either. Listen to this, when the Indian Express dug into the matter, they found that since independence only 486 artifacts were reported missing. On the other hand, UNESCO says that more than 50,000 artifacts were taken out of the country till 1989. And an audit by an Indian organization revealed that between 1992 and 2017, nearly 4,500 items were actually stolen from our monuments. Will the cops really go after artifacts that don't have a missing report? Things get harder because smuggled art quickly finds its way across borders. And buyers are sometimes equally complicit in this nefarious activity. For instance, when Iraq and Syria were ravaged by war, American imports of cultural property from these regions soared by nearly 100%. You'd imagine that buyers would have had a hunch that it wasn't really a legal handover of these goods. Even renowned auction house Sotheby's has had its name dragged in the mud because of its associations with smugglers. And the art market globally isn't really tightly regulated. There isn't someone policing everything with a hawk eye. And the end result is that $6 billion worth of items are smuggled. The big question is, what's the economic impact if we were to bring back the antiquities from museums across the world? Well, you'd assume that the tourism impact would be significant. That people will flock to see the cultural artifacts in museums. That it'll lead to local job creation in the vicinity, shops and restaurants can emerge. But the problem is, no one's visiting museums in India. In 2015, government-run museums only got 100,000 visitors each. And since we have around 800 museums in the country, that's just 80 million people entering museums. In a country of 1.4 billion folks. Sure, we don't have the Mona Lisa to boast of. But, the problem is that museums haven't been sold to us as exciting places to amble around and spend our weekends. And frankly, the blame lies squarely with the museums. And probably with the government too. A 2011 report by a parliamentary committee actually called out the bad shape of Indian museums. For instance, the famous National Museum in Delhi has 26 galleries. But 7 of these were closed for a period of 3 to 4 years. And the manuscript gallery was closed from 2003 to 2011. Simply due to poor management. Also, only 10% of artifacts are actually put on display. And they're not even changed to make things more exciting and interesting for visitors. Why would visitors even be remotely excited about a museum in such circumstances? Is it due to a lack of funds, you ask? Well, we spend less than 0.1% of our budget on the Ministry of Culture. And that does seem like quite a measly allocation. But here's the thing. The ministry hasn't even spent the little money it has prudently. In fact, an article in The Hindu in 2018 said that since the 1980s, more than 2,000 crore rupees of funds were not used at all. So it probably has more to do with a do not care attitude towards museums than anything else. So yeah, getting back our stolen artifacts is just the first step. We need to ensure that they get pride of place in our museums. And then we need to market the museums to domestic and foreign tourists alike. That's the only way museums can make money and continue to protect the cultural heritage of the country. If you like the today's scoop, please like it, share it with your friends and subscribe the channel for latest top stories.